In this episode, we talk about the suspension and resignation of BRS leader K. Kavita and what this latest rift in the party means for its future. We also talk about a lone farmer who has managed to stall one of the biggest mall projects in Kerala. But first, we talk about Maharashtra, where a century-old document has just revised one of the state's most contentious political movements. Hi, I'm Icha Sharma, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. The Maratha community, which makes up over a third of Maharashtra's population, has long demanded reservation in jobs and education. And though the demand dates back to the 1980s, it intensified in the past 2 decades, leading the Devendra Fadnavis-led BJP government to give in to this demand in 2018. But in 2021, the Supreme Court struck it down, saying it breached the 50% reservation cap and that Marathas weren't a backward community.
See, the biggest hurdle in Maratha reservation is Marathas as a community is a very influential community.
This is the Indian Express's Shubhangi Khapre, who reports on Maharashtra for the paper.
And they have, in the entire history of Maharashtra and even pre-independence, if you look at right from Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj era, the warrior king, they have never faced discrimination or based on the caste, community or subcaste. So they were always in the forefront. And today, so on what basis can you consider them as backward? Because when Indian Constitution was made, the definition of backwardness was very different. It was not essentially centered on educational and economic backwardness. It had the backwardness related to the social stigmatization, which the Marathas have never faced in the entire historical past, if you see.
But despite this, protests for a Maratha quota had been taking place for a while now, led by the activist Manoj Zarange Patil. And it is after months and months of these protests that the government on Tuesday agreed to implement the Hyderabad Gazette, a 1918 order from the Nizam's era that records the Marathas of Marathwada as Kunbis, a peasant community listed under the OBC category.
So, a Kunbi is a subcaste of Marathas. But basically, Kunbi, Marathas and Maratha Kunbis are almost the same. That's what the experts say. Because Maratha community, if you go back in the historical past, they did agriculture and also were involved in the military kind of action or, warrior, their ancestors. So it's very difficult to discriminate, whether they are Kunbi or they are Maratha. So one theory is that Maratha and Kunbi are the same. Now, if you see Vidarbha region of Maharashtra, which is the most agriculturally vulnerable place, there the Kunbi Marathas are already availing reservations since 1992 when Mandal Commission was implemented. But the Western Maharashtra, which was economically prosperous, there the Marathas took the pride that we are forward, and at that time they did not want to be a part of the backward community in the past. I mean, this I'm talking about 1960 onwards when the state was created, and even then there was this appeal that the Marathas should be considered as backward, but they had refused that.
In fact, earlier records from 1884 did not mention Marathas separately, but listed them as Kunbis, reinforcing that the two groups were historically treated as the same. But Shubhangi says that it is in Western Maharashtra and Marathwada, where Marathas have traditionally identified as forward warrior class, that the demand for quota benefits has been most intense in recent years.
Yes, this whole protest, I mean, if we just draw a comparison between 2018 and now, in 2018, it was a very organized kind of a protest where nodal agency, the Maratha Kranti Morcha, the nodal organization, that led the protest. That protest was leaderless. That protest was not political in the sense that it did not give platform to established political leaders or the parties. So they came up with a kind of a strategic decision where a group of people, with the support of course, the established leaders, but they were put in the background and they were the front face and they represented the Maratha community. Now, those protests was very volatile in the sense it elicited huge response. I mean, across Maharashtra, that was also for the first time it had come up on that magnitude. It was a mammoth scale, I mean, unimaginable in the recent decades, we can say.
And this is where activist Manoj Zarange Patil, who has been leading protests across the state, comes in. His recent sit-in at Mumbai's Azad Maidan drew thousands of supporters, forcing the government to respond.
Manoj Darange Patil got into center stage since August 2023. Till then, he was one of the activists of the Maratha agitation. But post Lathi charge, we know all the history 2 years ago, But he's been very committed about it because he also hails from Marathwada region where the distance is visible because sizable Maratha population, they are engaged in agriculture sector. They do farming and the small and marginal farmers representing Marathas, they are reeling in financial distress, which is a fact. And he's fighting for their rights. Because if you look at this agitation also, Maratha, it also somewhere sharply shows a divide between the upper class and the lower class Marathas. Not in the terms of caste or community, but in terms of social status. And the upper class Marathas who've been ruling and dominant, they are not very keen on reservation, though they have to take a stand for political reasons. But the poor Marathas, they really feel if they get the reservation, they can get access to better education and also government jobs. Now, Manoj Darange Patil is representing that class and that community, and he's very committed about his cause. I mean, there can be no two opinions about it.
In fact, over the years, he has gone on multiple hunger strikes, including a recent 5-day one that he ended on Tuesday, after the state government issued a government resolution, accepting most of his key demands, including the implementation of the Hyderabad Gazette.
Now, so far, the difference was if you look at the 2023, the coalition government which was led by Eknath Shinde, at that time also they had made promises, but there was nothing very concrete in terms of, the official document in that sense. They had issued a draft notification, but which was allowed to lapse. So what is the importance of this Hyderabad Gazette? Now, Hyderabad Gazette is something, the Marathwada state, now with 8 districts which are there currently, that was under the Nizam's rule and it was under Hyderabad state before independence. Now, with this acceptance of Hyderabad Gazette, the Marathas, the current Maratha population, they will have access to the historic records. So if in the historic records, as per the Hyderabad Gazette, if they can prove their ancestral lineage, if they can get the access to the records which says that, they were Kunbi community, and if there are kind of adequate records, statements, or, the names that within a bracket, if it's stated that, yes, they were Kunbis, that will help them to kind of furnish the documents. And based on those documents, they can then avail the OBC reservation.
And so with that, they gain access to the 27% quota available to OBCs in Maharashtra. However, the government has resisted calls for a blanket issuance of Kunbi certificates to all Marathas across Maharashtra. Instead, it insists that only documentary proof based on Hyderabad Gazette records will qualify. And though this offers a concrete resolution, OBC groups fear dilution of their share of quotas.
See, from the very beginning, the OBC community has been actually very, very upset with this whole thing. The only difference between Marathas and OBC community is the Marathas are more organized, and also they've been a ruling party for decades now. And it has also been a socially forward community. I mean, they were never subjected to austerities, never subjected to social boycotts. So because of that, when it comes to organization, the Marathas are more organized, and under one umbrella, they come together and they fight for their rights. Now, unlike Marathas, the OBCs are splintered groups. There are 350 communities in Maharashtra listed under OBCs, and they are smaller segments. But yes, they have always been unanimous in stating that they will not allow the dilution of existing OBC quota. Now, in Maharashtra, if you look at the entire OBC quota, it comes to, along with the VJNT and other subgroups, it comes to 27%. Now, with 350 communities sharing that 27% quota. Now, their apprehension is if Marathas, even if they avail the Kunbi certificates and all that, their apprehension is Marathas have always been very dominant ruling class, they are forward class. If the sizable Marathas avail this reservation under OBC, they fear that their community will be adversely affected. As it is, they feel that their share is very limited, with 350 communities having to share 27%. As it is they're finding it difficult. And with additional Marathas coming in that OBC category, they feel they stand to lose very badly. So all elected members of state legislative assembly, MPs, members of parliament, the local leaders, the state cabinet ministers who represent OBC, they are very upset, and they've been pursuing with the state government that you should not allow backdoor entry of Marathas in OBC quota. And this stand is very clear, and it's a consistent stand. And they have also threatened to kind of come on streets. They had already started agitation in Nagpur. The National OBC Federation has already started a chain agitation which is going on. And tomorrow the Chief Minister is visiting Nagpur and probably is going to have discussions. And today in the cabinet meeting, the Chief Minister has taken a decision saying that we have set up the OBC Commission and that will look into all these issues of the schemes, the quota. But having said this, the government is firm on the stand that GR has been issued and they are not going to roll back on that.
Now, Shubhangi says that even though Marathas have not been a social backward community, previous governments based on surveys conducted under them have established that this is not the case.
Based on the survey, based on the empirical data, they have established that Marathas are socially and economically backward class. And therefore, the state government had also come up with a special act under SCBC Act, which was passed in the State Assembly and Council, and they were given 10% reservation in February 2024. But Manoj Zirangi Patil is not willing to accept separate reservation because he fears the separate reservation to Marathas will not withstand constitutional validity, or legally it could be challenged. And therefore, he is saying Marathas should get reservation only under OBC quota. That's where it is. But it's not going to be so easy, because every individual who comes forward and who furnishes the documents, it will have to be kind of verified. So it's going to be a long process. But we can say that the process has started at least. And process is started with the consent of the state administration and through proper government resolution. So it has a administrative sanctity. It has a government consent.
And next, we shift our focus to Telangana, where a family rift has now escalated into a full-blown political crisis. The Bharat Rashtra Samiti has been no stranger to internal dissent, but this week the tensions reached a breaking point when K. Kavita MLC, the daughter of K. Chandrasekhar Rao, once a prominent face of the party, was suspended with immediate effect. Now, Kavita was suspended on Tuesday, and a day later, she actually resigned from the party's primary membership and at a press conference accused her cousins of conspiring against her while warning her father to check who he is surrounded by.
आज चंद लोग बीआरएस पार्टी में हमारे आसपास पिताजी के इर्द गिर्द थोड़े लोग जिनके जो वेस्टेड इंटरेस्ट है, जिनको अपनी ही फायदा की जो सोच है, ऐसे लोग बीआरएस पार्टी में उनका लीड रोल हो गया है और उनके वजह से उन्होंने मेरे पिताजी के ऊपर, मैं ऐसा मानती हूँ, दबाव बना के मुझे पार्टी से निकालने का काम किया है. लेकिन ultimately,
now her exit from the BRS highlights not just a personal rift within the influential Kalvakuntala family, but also the deepening cracks in a party that has been struggling after losing power in the state. To understand how this feud unfolded and what it could mean for the party's future, we speak to the Indian Express's Nikhila Henry. Nikhila, start by talking about the significance the Kalvakuntala family holds in Telangana politics.
Yeah, so the Kalvakuntala family of KCR, who is K. Chandrasekhar Rao, the former Chief Minister of Telangana, who was two-time Chief Minister. Ever since the state was formed, he was the Chief Minister of Telangana till the Congress won power in 2023 and Revanth Reddy became the Chief Minister. So he has two children, K. Kavita, who's the younger daughter, and KTR or KT Ramarao, who is the elder son. So his nephew is also in politics and was a former irrigation minister of Telangana, who is T. Harish Rao. Another relative is Santosh Kumar, who was a former Rajya Sabha MP. So these are the five characters who are in news currently. While the family is rather big and has several people, who are associated with politics, business and other things, the key players of this current fiasco, which is happening within the Bharat Rashtra Samiti, the BRS, centered around five people. That is KCR, K. Kavita, KT Ramarao, T. Harish Rao and Santosh Kumar.
Right, and we know that Kavita this week was suspended for anti-party activities. So what do we know about what triggered this very public clash within the BRS family?
Yeah, so this dates back to May this year when a letter which Kavita wrote to K. Chandrasekhar Rao as the party president of BRS got leaked. The letter basically said that during the Silver Jubilee celebration, when KCR addressed huge gathering in Telangana, he should have taken the case of BJP more seriously, or that he should have lashed out against the BJP more vigorously is what her criticism was. And there was other small suggestions which she made and all that. But anyway, the letter got leaked in May this year. And when she was asked how the letter got leaked, because there was a lot of confusion around, whether she herself had leaked the letter, she said that there were coverts within the BRS who are working against her. And it's the work of these covert operatives who have targeted her and who have leaked the letter. So that was her first reaction. And then later on, shortly after that, she held a press conference in which she did not name her brother K.T. Ramarao, but she basically lashed out against him, saying that he is not doing enough work for Telangana. He does not have ground presence, and that whenever there is an allegation against their father and the party president, the working president of BRS, who is KTR, does not respond immediately, or that, there is no agitation on ground except for Twitter or X. KTR is largely inactive is what she basically alleged during that press conference. So that went on, and according to Kavita, it has been over 100 days since she raised these allegations against her brother without naming him. But what happened recently was that the Congress government in Telangana decided to hand over the Kaleshwaram Lift Irrigation Project probe to the CBI.
Right, and Nikhila, could you briefly tell our listeners about this project and why it has been so contentious? And also, how is it connected to BRS?
So the Kaleshwaram Lift Irrigation Project was a crown jewel for KCR. He himself was very proud of that particular project, which completed in 2019. And it is something which was considered to be a lifeline for Telangana. So what happened was that in one of the pillars of the Kaleshwaram project sunk, leading to flooding. And that resulted in inquiry into the whole Kaleshwaram project per se. And that was going on ever since the Congress government took over. But in the recently held assembly session, the Chief Minister of Telangana, A. Revanth Reddy, announced in the House Legislative Assembly that the Kaleshwaram probe will be handed over to CBI. Then KCR did approach the High Court, and he has got a respite till October 7th from the High Court, that nothing will happen till October 7th is what the court said. This was the backgrounder, that a CBI probe was being initiated against KCR. And Kavita responded to that by calling a press conference. And in that particular press conference, she said that there are people who have surrounded KCR and who have benefited from KCR, who have amassed wealth because of KCR. And she named her cousins, Harish Rao and Santosh Kumar, and also an industrialist. So she basically said that, these people have taken undue advantage of KCR, especially because T. Harish Rao was the irrigation minister. Should he not have taken the responsibility of the probe into Kaleshwaram project? How come he is let off the hook? And how come KCR is being targeted in the CBI inquiry, is what she said.
And it was soon after these remarks that she was suspended, right?
Yeah, so soon after that, on Tuesday, basically the BRS issued a notice which basically suspended her for anti-party activities which are causing big loss for the party. So this letter said that it was with the blessings of KCR that she is being suspended. So in response to that, she called a press conference on Wednesday and said that she again named T. Harish Rao and Santosh Kumar and said that there are forces who are conspiring to break the Kalvakuntla family and the BRS in itself. So that's the chronology of events.
And Nikhila, speaking about Harish Rao and also Santosh Kumar, who you mentioned earlier, why are these so central to the BRS's inner circle?
Yeah, so Harish Rao is a major figure in the BRS. So if you were to look at, the top leadership of the BRS, right, it would be KCR, KTR, Kavita and Harish Rao. So they were always considered the four pillars of the Bharat Rashtra Samiti, you know. And about Santosh Kumar, I mean, he is somebody who has a lot of clout within the party in terms of the financial dealings of the party. He is somebody who heads that, or rather somebody who has control over the finances of the party is what we have learned from BRS sources. So that's their significance.
Right, and as you mentioned earlier, that the decision was cleared by KCR himself. So how unusual was it for him to allow the suspension of his own daughter?
Yeah, so what we have to understand is that KCR has been silent and has been absent from the political scene of Telangana for a long time, ever since he lost power. He has not attended the assembly sessions. He might have made just a couple of public appearances, in which one was when he spoke for the Silver Jubilee celebrations and all that. So him suspending Kavita is a significant step for BRS because the fissures within the party which Kavita was talking about came out in the open. And it kind of has this undercurrent that KCR has chosen who his heir apparent or who his successor will be. So if Kavita leaves the party, you know, which she has done today, she has submitted her resignation from the primary membership of the party and also her MLC post. Who's in line is KTR or KT Ramarao. And of course, Harish Rao is somebody who accepts KTR as the working president of Bharat Rashtra Samiti. So there is a consolidation of power under KCR, or in the absence of, you should say, I think in the absence of KCR, there is a consolidation of power between two major forces within the BRS, that is KT Ramarao and Harish Rao. And Kavita seems to have lost out the battle, that she is out of the picture right now.
And so given these conditions, what's next for her? Because Kavita's associates also say that her options now range from launching a new party to joining the ruling party. And also, what does her exit mean for the BRS party?
Yeah, so Kavita was basically imprisoned, incarcerated in connection with the Delhi liquor case or the Delhi excise policy case. You know, after she was incarcerated in Tihar jail for about 5.5 months, when she came out, she conducted a lot of, programs under the banner of both the BRS and her NGO and cultural organization called Telangana Jagrati. So she has been very active. I mean, you would see Kavita, addressing issues, a gamut of issues, including the ones which she had quoted today, like the BC reservations, women empowerment in terms of, she alleges that the Congress government is not giving enough for the women in Telangana. I mean, she did a lot of things after coming out of prison. So as far as she is concerned, I mean, the party losing her is concerned, it is definitely important because she is also a woman leader of the party. And now the party has to prop up women leaders against Kavita and say that, Kavita is not the only woman leader of the party, And the other thing is, when what her future plans are concerned, there were three possibilities which were being discussed yesterday. One was that she would float her own party. The other was that she would join the Congress. And the third was that she would accept her brother's leadership and become meek. So the third has not happened. She has decided to resign from the party. She ruled out the possibility that she will join any political party, including the Congress. But she has not said whether she will launch a political party on her own. So that seems to be the open-ended situation which Kavita wants us to, hang on to for the time being. I think that she will come up with a plan of action very soon after consulting with seniors who are on her side of the BRS team,
And lastly, Nikhila, with this shifting political dynamics in the BRS, which is the biggest opposition in Telangana, what does this rift mean for the state politics?
Yeah, so BRS is one of the opposition parties in Telangana, the other being the BJP. So BRS is a regional party, and it was, for the past 10 years, it has been a very strong regional party, which basically meant that it was a fight between the BRS and the Congress, and the BJP was on the sidelines. But when it comes to state politics now, when the BRS weakens because of infighting within the party, it is the BJP which will get an impetus. There was also a question of, whether BRS would merge with the BJP, and Kavita had said that KTR had approached her saying that he would want to merge the party with the BJP. So there are a lot of equations, which we'll have to kind of see in the future as to how this regional party is going to survive with such a massive fight happening within the family.
And in the end, we talk about Kerala, where a lone farmer has managed to stall one of the state's biggest mall projects. UAE-based businessman M.A. Yusuf Ali's plan to build a Lulu shopping mall in Thrissur has been delayed following a legal challenge by 61-year-old farmer T.N. Mukundan, who argues that the proposed site is a designated paddy field protected under law. As reported by the Indian Express's Shaju Philip, the issue came into focus after Yusuf Ali said at a public event that his Thrissur Mall project had not materialized because a case was pending in the High Court. Mukundan later confirmed he had filed the petition but clarified that his political affiliation with the Communist Party of India had no bearing on the case. The land in question, located in Ayanthol village, was excluded from the Paddy Land Data Bank by the Revenue Divisional Officer, which would have allowed it to be used for non-agricultural purposes. Mukundan challenged this decision in 2023, contending that the land is still classified as paddy. And the Kerala High Court recently set aside the RDO's order and directed authorities to re-examine the status of the land, effectively halting the mall project. Philip notes that Mukundan cited an earlier report by the local agriculture officer confirming the land's inclusion in the data bank of protected paddy fields. He argued that Lulu's claim that the land had been converted before the enactment of the Kerala's Conservation of Paddy Land and Wetland Act of 2008 was rejected by the court. A Lulu Group spokesperson said the company is studying the verdict before deciding on the next steps. Meanwhile, Mukundan has a history of legal action over land conservation and says he lives alone and is committed to continuing his legal battle regardless of financial or political pressure. Since 2016, he has filed multiple petitions against paddy field reclamation, including one that contributed to the 2017 resignation of then Transport Minister Thomas Shandy over alleged encroachment of government land for a tourism project. He cultivates rice and vegetables on 2 acres of his own land and 8 acres leased from others. He has filed 15 petitions against paddy field conversion, stating his fight is not against Lulu specifically, but against the larger issue of wetland destruction. You were listening to 3 Things by The Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by Shashank Bhargav and me, Ichha Sharma. If you like the show, do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcast. You can also recommend it to someone you think may like it, with a friend or in your family. This is the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcast or write to us at podcast@indianexpress.com.